The following broadcast is intended for mature audiences. These are real people sharing very real, deeply personal experiences. This content may be considered triggering for others and for those who are sharing. The chat room is a privilege intended for discussions and sharing. You are not being asked to agree, but you are being asked to stay civil and refrain from personal attacks. Listener discretion is advised. All right, welcome back to Am I Mental, a weekly live podcast where real people share real issues living with mental health. I am your host, E, and with us now, as always, is the co-host, Bexy.
Hey, guys.
And tonight, I said on Facebook that tonight, if you're following it, you're going to get pissed tonight, and you are. But, as always, this is actually something new I've never heard of before, and it's going to be pretty interesting, I think. And our guest tonight is S.
Hello.
So, go ahead, S. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself before we dive into this?
I just a mom. I'm just a stay-at-home mom right now. We're looking into adopting soon, and all my little kids just got to school, so husband's in the military, we're just kind of the regular, I guess, like American dream, suburban, blue-collar family, really.
In some ways. Now, what's funny, so just a little backstory here on how this whole thing came to be, because it's really unusual, and I think it's worth mentioning. My dad, who is a fan of the show, although he doesn't listen all the time because this isn't for everyone and it gets to him a bit. And, I understand. He sent me a TikTok video of someone that was, they explained all their diagnoses and how it impacts them and how they basically got to the point where even doctors said that she was just being manipulative, even though it was just her condition, and that she was so over-medicated that when her prescriptions lapsed once, she almost died from withdrawal. So I created a TikTok account. I reached out to this person, got in contact with them. We actually started following each other so I could message back and forth. And they said they wanted to be a part of the show, but I never heard from them again. 2 days later, I get this video of a put a finger down kind of thing. And if you're not familiar with TikTok, there's this whole fad, at least for a while there, where it's like, put your finger down if you have seasonal affective disorder. So I'd have 5 fingers up and put my thumb down. Put your finger down if you have, ADD. Oh, there goes another one of my fingers. Kind of thing. But this was so highly specific. I'm like, maybe 3 people on the entire planet might be able to put their finger down on this. And I started reaching out and trying to get them to follow me back. Going, hey, I want you on my show. And I got them, and that is S. And what's funny is that S, for a while there, didn't tell her husband about it. And she thought that she was being stalked by someone. And it wasn't like stuff that I was someone else. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out her husband is actually one of my cousins.
It's so crazy to think about still.
I know. And it's just our family is so big that, these by marriage things could easily, not know each other that well. It's like, and I kept looking at the videos going, gosh, she looks familiar.
Same thing for like 2 weeks. And I just died when I found out that my husband didn't recognize you the first time I showed him your picture. He just glanced at it and didn't even, nope, don't know.
Yeah. All of a sudden, I get a message on Facebook Messenger from my cousin saying, hey, you have a podcast? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I know. My wife's going on it. And I was like, wait, what? So, yeah, small world, isn't it? I mean, it's just kind of... And I wasn't using any GPS or anything on TikTok, so it's not like it was a geographical thing. Since we both live in the same state, but we live in a very big state. So, but, yeah. So, anyway, if you want to go ahead and tell us, what was your little TikTok video that got me here? and got you
Oh
here.
man, I don't even remember the specific post, but basically, um, I kept seeing this like the TikTok trend where you do the put a finger down on something really stupidly, oddly specific. Nobody else will do it. So mine was put her finger down if you've ever been stalked and manipulated into marrying a pedophile and eventually had to give your baby up for adoption because of it.
It was a little more detailed than that, but yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I heard that, and I mean, I literally first thing out of my mouth was, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, I remember watching that video because you sent me a link to it, and oh my god.
Right?
For all that video's been shared, it must be like shadow banned because it gets like no views. It's got like 20. So it must have traumatized a couple people.
Well, I mean, yeah, that was like, it was so shocking to hear that happened. And I mean, you had to rattle it off fast because you only had, was it like this? The default's 15 seconds, but you can go up to a minute. And you were just like, put a finger down if you ever been stalked by a pedophile and they've secretly married you. I mean, just wow. So yeah, let's go ahead and tell the story.
Right? So, jumping back just over a decade, I was fresh adult, and I was, as most young adults, only interested in partying. So I did that a lot. The northern Pacific Northwest, specifically party scene that I was involved in, is pretty small. Every 500 people go to the same 10 parties a year. And, if you've gone, you'll know what I'm talking about. Usually they're outside. So I would go to one, and I would run into Jay, and I would, oh my gosh, nice to see you, and hop away into the sunset to do my thing. And we would run into each other. Like, it started happening at, like, every, club or rave place or whatever I'd go to. He would be there. And it was like, I was so young and naive that I was just like, oh my God, it's fate. Because, he kept running into me, and he was very aggressively, like, flirting with me, and it was very obvious that he was interested in me when we would just run into each other. And, every time we'd run into each other, I'd be like, oh, chat for a few minutes, and I'd find out we had something else in common. Oh my gosh, fate, right? If you're a naive 19-year-old, that's probably what you're going to think.
Almost in that whole princess thing.
Like never, and that kind of stems from, like, if you've never had a stable childhood, like I didn't, then you don't really know what to look for in a relationship. So, that basically led me down, we kept, oh, hey, oh my gosh, and we'd share a little bit, and then eventually, like, after 6 times this happens, I was like, let's hang out, we gotta hang out, we have so much in common, and, he's like, yes, finally, because he'd been already asking me, and I had refused, because I wasn't comfortable going home from a 500-person party with a stranger, which was probably the only good decision I made in a matter of like 2.5 years there.
Well, hey, when you're young and
right?
and I know the area that you're talking about, Pacific Northwest is basically, for those that don't know, if you're not in Seattle and you're not in Portland, there's basically nothing. That's basically it. There's a ton of cities, but they're not all that big. There's nothing going on in any of them.
Right. And yeah, so so the first time we hang out, it's everything I say, oh my gosh, me too, he says, or I say to him, and he tells me, just a little bit about his background. My dad was a doctor. He's sick now with a disease like Alzheimer's, which is pretty much the only true thing he ever told me besides his name. Well, he told me his age too, so that's 3 things. But so, it was just everything. Everything that we had in common was just so striking to me. And we literally never stopped hanging out. After the first time we hung out, we just never split up for like a month until we got married. During that month, we did nothing but party. I found out, he was moderately wealthy. You know, he had an inheritance, a trust fund, but he didn't have access to it. He had to go through a lawyer. But the lawyer was required to pay certain things for him and to give him a certain amount of cash every month. And he used that to smuggle drugs and buy drugs and drug his future wife, which would be me, and friends to basically make us complacent enough to do the things that we weren't really comfortable doing. You know, he would, oh, well, you don't want to go to this party? You should just pop this Molly and you'll totally want to go. Well, duh.
Right.
But, like, you know, he would do that in, like, smaller doses. It wasn't always hard drugs, you know. It was like, well, if we end up going there, we can hang out and it'll be fun. You know, it was small manipulations. And, you know, you realize, like, 6 weeks, you know, 6 years, it doesn't matter. Like, you realize weeks or months or years later, like, oh my God, I've been manipulated. You know, and I didn't at the time for a long time. So, anywho, we did the partying, and he had me pretty, like, steadily addicted to a small amount of, like, party drugs all the time. There were times we didn't do drugs for, like, a week at a time, but it wasn't, like, a sobriety thing or anything. It was just a, like,
Ran
one
out.
time camping and didn't want to leave, you know? So, like, we eventually, after, like, 6 weeks of just hanging out, you know, we'd only been apart, like, 2 times. You know, he's like, we should just do something crazy and get married. And I was like, oh my God, definitely. And, you know, just totally swooned over it because, you know, he's like this financially stable, handsome guy that was totally head over heels for me, right? I mean, God, he wants to marry me after 6 weeks. This is perfect fate.
Kismet.
Get married, and, like, immediately everything changed, obviously. He started disappearing for, like, hours. Like, the quantities of drugs that he expected me now to, like, drive to and from certain places, like, ended up increasing to the point where if we had gotten caught, I would probably still be in prison. And, oh my God, saying that is, like, scary even, but, you know, that's how it was.
Because where you were, that place is no joke when they come down on that.
No, it's pretty scary, and you know, I'm so grateful now that we made it through. And I was even pulled over a couple times doing that, and it was, you know, it was scary. But you know, eventually he starts acting funnier and funnier, and 2 months into the marriage, we'd already had, like, suspicious 6-hour disappearances and where'd my husband go? It's 2 a.m. And, you know, by 6 weeks into the marriage, I was already pregnant. And I didn't know it quite yet. So we're at, like, 6 weeks. He goes to a parole office. We're just out running errands one day. I had gone to Walmart because I was, like, really into sandwiches at the time. Probably the pregnancy that I didn't know about. And, you know, he stops at, like, a government-type building, you know, but it's really small because the place we were at was extremely small. It's just a vacation destination, basically. And I was like, what the hell is this place, you know? And he's like, oh, I just got to check in here for something real quick. And I was like, cool. What is it? And, you know, he's like, it's my probation office. And I was like, what the fuck? And he's like, I got to go in right now, and I'll be right back. And he goes in, and he doesn't come the fuck back. I went in to find him, and who I thought was a parole person gave me his car keys, our car keys or whatever, and was like, he's been arrested. You can find his name on the website. You'll see it in like an hour or two. Go fill out your visitation form so you can figure it out with him. And he was quite quick with me, and I had no idea at the time why. So I get on the internet like a couple hours later, and he's booked for statutory rape. That's what it's called. I couldn't remember what we were talking about last time. It was statutory rape. And I was like, you know, just floored, obviously. And we had already been, I was 19, 20, he was 20, 21. And so statutory rape. And he goes to jail, and I finally get in to see him after forever waiting for my forms. And I get in, and I was like, what the fuck? You know, what's going on? And he's like, oh, well, it happened so long ago, definitely before we met. Um, it hadn't. I learned later, much later, like it had happened like after we had been married.
Oh yeah, that happened. Let's see, it's been 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's been
So
about 30 weeks.
the day that I got in to visit him was the day I found out I was pregnant. I got my positive pregnancy test, and because I was like, "Hey, I haven't had a period in like 6 months. I should probably look into that," And I was too skinny to be. I don't even know how I got pregnant because I wasn't like. I didn't look like I was like hardcore addicted to like amphetamines or something, but I was definitely underweight. And
So maybe a little anorexic looking.
yeah. And like she wonders how sometimes when I get a little skinny, I look like a skeleton, and it's kind of gross. But so I get in and I tell him that I'm pregnant, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy, everything I've ever wanted." And during this like the last 6 weeks, I had found out he actually had two daughters, both under 1 year old. Let that sink in, and was divorced, and like all this stuff he obviously didn't tell me before we were married. Like he had been divorced, he has two daughters from two different girls from the same year. I'm pregnant, and the oldest one was 7 months. Okay, so this is not going well. But I think, well, he's divorced at least, and he loves me this time. It's gonna work out with me, and this is just a hiccup from something that happened months ago. And obviously, if it's statutory rape, it's not a big deal because she consented, is what I thought. Obviously, I don't think that's true anymore. I think that the girl just was afraid of him, or they didn't have evidence.
Yeah.
But so after the jail session, he got 12 days for statutory rape, you guys. 12 days in county jail for statutory. And so this is the part that really gets it going. After I had gone home, I had 12 more days, about 8 days, whatever it was, to just think. I didn't have a job. My husband's in jail. I'm just like bumming around my friends' houses and couches, like not really giving a shit what my life's doing. And so I started looking him up because I looked up for the jail stuff. I was checking every day, like, is he going to get out? Is he going to get out? So eventually something else pops up. Not a jail website, the sex offender registry. He has been convicted of first-degree rape. So I haul ass back to the county jail because I was pissed. And
I'm sure.
And was like, it's obviously the next couple days later, and he was just like, it was a misunderstanding, it was a mistake, she was older than me even, and she just recanted because she's super Christian, and I can't find anybody in this town to talk to me about this guy besides the people that we already hang out with, right? And so I'm like, fine, okay, I guess, like, and I'm starting to get like turn a little sour at this point. Like, you're gone on an awful lot, you have all these like weird sex charges, you're divorced, you have kids, like, holy shit, this is just piling on.
And it sounds to me like the misunderstanding was that he didn't understand no.
Right? For real. And, so I get pregnant, I'm so excited. I was so excited at first because even as a little kid, I've always just wanted to be a mom. Like, number one goal, like, life goal, be a mom. I didn't even understand why or how or whatever, obviously I was pregnant and the dad was just like a horrible choice, but that's what I wanted. So I was very excited and happy, and I've been crocheting for 10 years at that point, so I just immediately made the baby blanket and I was so stoked. And like 2 months go by and we're doing the same shit, and like shit gets weirder and weirder with him. He disappears longer, sometimes overnight. Like, I can't really do anything because we're like, I'm homeless, and if I leave him, I'm pregnant now, I'm homeless. And we're eventually, things are kind of in a routine. Like, we're driving back and forth between cities. Like, we're sleeping at certain places. Like, it was kind of routine. So one day we go up to a major city, and he says, I have something to tell you. I was like, oh, great, that's never good news. It was not, by the way. He goes, I have another court date today. And I was like, what? Mind blown, like 4 months of marriage. I have another court date.
Why am I learning about it the day of?
Right? And he's like, but I'm not going to go to jail today, so don't worry. You should just wait in the car because I don't want you stressed out about it, and there's going to be a lot of people.
You know what?
I did
Telling
not
someone
wait in
that
the
I don't
car.
want you stressing out, you're going to stress
I'm
out.
a curious cat anyway, and I wanted to know everything. And also the building was really old, and I love the building. Anyway. I was not sitting in the car. Hell
Oh,
no.
so you love architecture too? So
Yeah, like, it has to do with history. So we go in and we meet his lawyer, and his lawyer looks at us and goes, "Sorry, I had to push the court date back. I was at a nude beach in Mexico." And I was like, immediately like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck kind of lawyer are you? That's what you intro with. But nice to meet you too, I guess. And he's like literally all tan, and he's got like bracelets and long hair, and it was just ridiculous. Anywho, we wait our turn. There's like hundreds of people in this courtroom because it's a major city. And eventually his name gets called, and he goes, he rattles off his charge. Sex abuse in the first degree of a minor under 14. Sex abuse in the second degree, anal penetration of a minor under 14. And he just goes on. He does that like 6 times, like 6, say minor under 14, minor under 14, minor under 14. And I was just like I just had my first panic attack, I guess. And then like before he rattles that off, and then the lawyer goes up and he goes, "Sir, he's just been married, and they haven't had any time together yet, so I really think we need to push back his sentencing again. X date." Judge goes, "Yeah, that makes total sense. I totally agree." Slams gavel, sends us away for 2-3 more months or something.
Meanwhile,
like
I'm sure the word "again" is rattling around inside your head.
Right.
Meanwhile, in the chat, Suspects hasn't mentioned it. Ivania is losing her shit in the chat right now.
Yes, I was waiting for a point to break in. Hang in there, Ivania. It's going to be something else.
It's a roller coaster.
Exactly.
So, all that happens in the first. So that court date happens, and oh my god, I was floored. I couldn't handle, I didn't even react. I just got in the car and we just went about our days, for a couple days. I couldn't even process it, because it all added up at once, the missing, the disappearing, never having money, he's always gone, all the sex charges in the fucking world, and it was so much, and I was pregnant, and I had wanted this baby so bad. So we get closer and closer to sentencing. I'm still, I'm still in limbo. What do I do? Do I leave? Do I stay? How am I going to do this? I'm pregnant, and, I can't live with my parents. I didn't at the time, I didn't know anything about welfare, or, I didn't have the wherewithal to call a grandparent that might have helped me, even though they're cranky, word I'm going to use. So I just didn't know what to do. I was just in a state of I was just floating and just I didn't know what to do. And eventually, so we were creeping pretty close up to the court date. And by that time I was about 20 weeks pregnant, 25, something like that. I don't know. And we go in and he gets sentenced. And this court date is different. He's completely alone besides his lawyer. They let me in, and 3 or 4 judges. I cannot remember if there was 4 or not. But there was
usually they use an odd number just so that way they have that ruling vote.
Probably, yeah, probably 3. But I just remember it was very odd. I'd never been in a courtroom where there was more than one judge. I'd never seen it on TV. It was not something, unless it was political. So he stands up. They make him stand up the whole time. They didn't allow him to sit. They were really rude to him, which I appreciate now. I was just wide-eyed, what do I do? Because I knew he was going to prison at that point, because he had pled out, in those couple months he had pled. I don't even know when he got this plea agreement, because yet again, I don't know who he talked to. Did he go to the police station? Was it just his lawyer? I don't even know the details. So he pleads down, and he gets sex abuse 2 felony, and that's it. And a year or 14 months in prison. Minimum state prison.
That is
And
just ridiculous.
leaves, and
Minimum
like,
for a guy that's been doing as much as he's done. He gets a minimum
and
sentence.
and now you can look him up, and it says high risk sex offender, high
Good.
risk, right? And yeah, except he lives across the street from a gosh, what's that called? I don't do it. So snow skiing place, ski resort. That's what it's called.
How? There's children there all the
I
time.
don't.
His
I don't
last
get
house
that.
was less than a mile from a school, and I've called the parole officer. Like he just got off parole several months ago, and I stalked him back. I am gonna admit it. I stalked this guy back. I watched everything I could on the internet to try and throw him back in prison, because when they sentenced him at that court date where they had 3 judges, they said, "This is strike 2. Next strike, you get life in prison. Don't fuck up again." And he literally said, "Don't fuck up again." I do remember that quite clearly because I was in shock. And the judges were just, there was a female and 2 men, and they were just disgusted. They said, "This is your last chance, and get out," basically. And they arrested him, took him away. But when they took him, like, and I had to like leave, and it was the first time I'd driven like in a big city, I was just like, what do I do? And I had to really figure it out. Like those first couple days, like I had to figure it out. And
And remember, everybody, she was brand new adult, not even old enough to drink yet.
right, and like
Yeah.
oh gosh, so I just hopped around to my own. I started going to my own friends' houses instead of his, because I didn't even realize up until he left that I was completely isolated from anybody I knew before him. I hardly even spoke with my parents anymore. And they couldn't support me, and I couldn't live with them, but they still loved me. Like I still talked to my parents. It wasn't like, we were no contact or anything. So, I didn't even realize until he left that I was completely alone and isolated at that point from anybody that I knew. So I just started reaching out, and but the night before he had gone to court, so I kind of like missed this part because it ties into the adoption part of it, and I was trying to lead up with the court stuff. So the night before he goes to court, I'm like hecka pregnant with no home except for the one his lawyer has given me. I'm aware at this point that if I leave him, I will have no home. So the night before the court date, he goes, "I really think we should do it about." No, it wasn't the night before. It was the night before his first court date with the creepy lawyer that was like, I just got back from a nude beach and shit. So the night before that, he was like, "I really think we should do an adoption, blah, blah." We had thought about it and talked about it. And finally, like, I didn't get to think about it. He talked about it, and he basically, he was like, "I'm going to prison, and I didn't tell you this when you got pregnant because I didn't want to stress you out, but I can never raise that baby. I can never live in the same house with it. Oh, and because, of this state's child support laws, you will get no more than, so it was between me and the other mothers that had custody of his kids. It was like we would end up with $170 a month in child support because he would be in prison, so it would just be coming out of his trust, and that was the maximum child support he could pay while he wasn't working, it was like such a stupid law. Anyway, so that he was like, "I'm not, obviously can't afford to support you and me in a different house and these other babies that I already pay for, so I really think it would be best if we just do an adoption." And I was just like, so like, well, fuck, like, what am I gonna do? What else am I gonna do? So eventually we had gotten paperwork for it. Like, he Googled it, he found an agency, he called, they sent us some stuff. He was like, "Oh, you get to pick the family." And I was like, finally, something, like, Jesus, so I scrolled through the book, and I was like, I like this couple, it's like a super rich people in Florida, it's Palm Beach rich. So I was like, I want them. And he was like, I like this couple, and called the place and set it up. And like, when we were setting up the adoption, they sent us some paperwork, and the paperwork is just, it was, as far as I know, is just pre-adoption contract. You can't take money for this baby. We won't exchange this. We won't exchange that. You can't do this. You can't do that. Blah, blah, blah. And then it has an expense report, and it's how much money do you need to survive to keep you healthy while you carry this baby to term, as what it's supposed to be for. So I put, my phone bill, gas to get to the doctor, and I had an extra like $30 a month because I literally Like, I did not have blankets or, like, maternity clothes. Like, I had nothing at the time. So, like, I had put that, and it ended up being like $300 a month, which I don't think is excessive. I was really not going to get to the doctor without it. So, I was pretty desperate. I sent it and sent it, and they sent it back, the agency. They said, we really don't think that's enough money. You could ask for more. And I was like, I don't want more. Like, I just want to be left alone and disconnect. Like, at that point, I had just totally tried to disconnect from my baby. Like, I was like, I just don't want to talk about my baby. Like, leave me alone. It's too much. And
it's overwhelming,
like,
the
okay.
situation you were in.
So my ex took the paperwork, and he's like, well, I'll do the expense report because I know more about money than you because, I'm from money and you're not. And I was like, well, that's fucking true. So I let him do it, and it ended up being like he ended up getting a bunch of money sent to him in prison, like for his books and shit. And I ended up getting the same amount of money originally requested because he just ended up using it for his books and his calls and all that stuff. And I never realized, like, until like just a few years ago how fucked up that was, and like very coercive of the agency and my ex. And eventually it ties in because, after he'd gone to prison, like, I was scared and desperate, and I had the adoption set up. And it seemed like a decent idea because I was like, scared and desperate. And I was just, the parents didn't talk to me much. He had chosen them, we, quote, had chosen him, but it was just, he called me every week, and I kept up pretenses because his trust had to pay. Once he went to prison and I contacted his lawyer and said, hey, I don't know how you're going to get a hold of me because XYZ. And he was like, well, I'm required to pay for housing for this guy and his family, which means wife and children, for as long as I'm the conservator of the trust. And I was like, hell yeah, like a good house, like finally. And, I ended up in a single wide trailer from like the 60s or 70s.
Hey, it's a house.
In most of it.
Was a roof over your head.
At the time, like, I was ecstatic too. And like looking back, like, I'm so glad I had a roof over my head too. But like, he put me in it in the middle of nowhere. I was more than an hour drive away from the nearest city and the nearest OB doctor. So I had to drive myself to the doctor for an hour, like, every time. I drove myself to my labor appointment, like, by myself. And
yeah, we've got a few comments on his behavior. We have Bob saying, I saw the non-parenting thing coming, and Brandy, what a dick.
Yeah.
He's such a dick. So we set all this adoption shit up, and eventually, like, it's fine, I guess. I just dealt with it. I just lived in the stupid middle of nowhere. I eventually convinced one of my friends to move there, and I was like, listen, the rent is paid. You just have to pay PG&E, and we can live here, and maybe I won't be fucking alone 24/7 for the next, 3 to 4 months, however long it would take to get my baby out. And he agreed. And, like, I literally just laid for like the last couple months of the pregnancy, just trying to dissociate, basically. And I didn't know at the time that's what I was doing. It was just like I think it was just like a coping mechanism.
And at this point, you hadn't been diagnosed with anything at this point, have you?
No, I hadn't been diagnosed with anything, and hilarious to me. So, eventually comes around like 35 weeks pregnant, and I was like, I got this. Like, I can leave this trailer when the baby comes, and I can just leave. Like, I'll just go to the state where the rest of my family lives, because I was like a 10-hour drive from them. So I was like, what if I just leave, and he'll be in prison, so he can't chase me. He won't get custody because he'll be gone. I'll just leave. So I called my adoption agency counselor lady, and I was like, what happens if I leave? I just want to keep my baby. What happens if I keep my baby? And she goes, we'll sue you for $20,000. That's the cost of all the legal and adoption fees that you've incurred so far. And I was just like, oh, fuck. And I don't really know what I said. I think it was just one of those things that floors you so bad that, like, the memory of hearing those words, like my environment around me will forever be like imprinted in my brain. But what happened afterwards, like I probably just went to bed because I didn't really have anything else to do. And
that's like when I found out that my now ex-wife, we were still married, but we were kind of separated. When I discovered through my own thinking things through, holy shit, she's actually cheating on me. So I remember the exact moment. I remember the lighting. I remember the smells. Right. But about 2 minutes after that, it's just gone.
Right? It just says, yeah, I contacted this guy that lived with me at the time. You know, nothing ever happened. Nothing weird ever happened between us, ever. We were just friends. You know, we had our own rooms. I don't want anybody to think anything. It's just
it can happen.
Right. Right. And, you know, he honestly spent most of his time in his room. But at the time, he had just moved in. I don't know. He had been there. His computer was up in the kitchen is what's going on. And I had that phone call like right at the entranceway to the living room. Okay, keep in mind this is a single wide trailer from the 60s with pretty much nothing in it besides an old school like bulb TV and a couch for me to lay on. So everything echoes. And he heard the whole conversation, and I contacted him like a year or so ago. We hadn't talked since I had the baby. And that's been almost a decade. So I contacted him and was like, do you remember this, or did I make this up? Because I'm traumatized. And he said, you know, I remember that exact thing. And I remember expecting you to be really pissed because you're usually really vocal about when someone annoys you or something, but you just went blank instead, I guess. And I was like, cool. So if it ever comes down to it, you know, for any reason, like I don't have any plans to go to court for anything right now. But if it came down to it, I was like, would you go to court and testify that phone call happened? Because I have no proof. And I've come to find out, like, you know, years and years down the road, that was totally illegal. She couldn't say that to me. It was totally, totally wrong. It's called coercion and duress. Yep. And it actually invalidates my kid's adoption. But I'm not a giant dick, so I don't want to destroy his life because the parents that we chose for him decided to cut contact off as soon as they got him. Pretty much. They sent me a couple like letters throughout, you know, the first 2 years, and then they disappeared.
Oh, you should talk a little bit about how you're, like, after you had the baby, before you jump into that, like, how they treated you when the baby was there, brand new.
Oh, right?
Yeah, okay, so let's set this up properly.
Yeah, let's, so should I just start from my labor appointment? Because it's pretty much just starts there. I go in there and, you know, it's 7 a.m. Monday, and they start all the induction stuff, and my water breaks Tuesday afternoon. And
for those that don't know, when the water breaks, you have a finite amount of time to push that baby out, or they have to cut the baby out.
Right. So Wednesday afternoon, she decides it's time to start pushing because it took me like 3 days to dilate. I wasn't ready to have the baby. I hadn't done any exercise. I just wasn't physically ready. So they had to force me. And
also it's your first child, which is always the toughest.
And I went in on my 40-week appointment, and she said, this is your labor day. We're not going to, when I'd gone in the week before, she was like, we're not even going to wait. We're just going to do it because you're clearly the most miserable person I've ever seen in my life. And it's pretty close to a quote of what my doctor told me. And so...
Yay, that must have felt good to hear.
Time to push. My doctor finally shows up. You know, I had like a billion nurses. My water broke, and I sat in it for up to 2 hours because nobody would come change my sheets.
And your pain meds, how are they working?
I got 2 epidurals and an IV. And at one point, I had a nurse come in and tell me to stop screaming because I was scaring the other mothers that were in labor. And, okay, so fast forward again.
The pain meds didn't work.
Right? Time to start pushing. And, you know, I couldn't really feel my legs, so I don't know what's up. My epidural just didn't go everywhere. I don't know. I could still feel stuff, but not other stuff. Super weird. So I push and push and push, and we're pushing forever, and over an hour I'm trying to push. And she finally goes, do you just want this baby to die inside of you instead of giving birth? You could just have a C-section. And I was like, oh my God, like, because she had mentioned a C-section like you know, a little while earlier, but it was like, you know, are you sure you want to do this? Let's just do a C-section. It'll be easier. And I was like, no, I don't want major surgery. And, you know, she was like, just, okay, let's just push it out. So, you know, fast forward, and she tells me that bullshit about, like, do you just want him to die? Like, and I was like, no, like, what the fuck? I'm, like, barely 21. Like, at this point, you know, my pregnancy had passed, and I'm just barely 21. I'd still never even drinking legally, because obviously I was pregnant. And, or been in a bar, anything. So, I was like, fine, C-section, obviously. I don't want to kill the baby. Like, what? So she takes me in to get my C-section, and she starts cutting me open, and I was screaming more because I could feel it, and I was, like, hysterical, and I was trying to, like rock my body, just move, like, get out of from under her knife, because she wouldn't stop. She told me at one point, like, stop screaming, and I was like, I can't stop screaming, you're slicing me open, and I can feel it. So the anesthesiologist immediately, like, after I was just, like, my, like, second or third time, I was like, yes, I fucking can feel it, that's not pressure. You know, he was like, I'm putting her out, and he just put a mask over me. And the next thing I remember is I woke up in the recovery room, totally flat on my back, which I don't remember doing that with my other C-sections, but maybe because these ones I were awake for, it was different. I'm not sure. So,
well, I haven't had a C-section, so I wouldn't know.
Right? I wake up, and I was like, where's my baby? You know, and I was, like, slurring my words, and I was out of it, you know, obviously I just had surgery. And they bring him to me, and he's in newborn clothes, not hospital clothes. He's totally changed, bathed, fed, everything. And they have him totally bundled up. And, you know, I noticed he was in clothes because I obviously moved, like, you know, they put him in my arms, like, kind of. They set him next to me on the bed instead of, like, putting him on my chest like you would a newborn. They put him next to me, and he was fully bundled, and I kind of tried to tip him up so I could look at him, and like pulled the blankets out of his face and saw, you know, he was in, like, a blue shirt and stuff. And at the time, I didn't know that they had newborn clothes for babies, because I didn't, at the hospital, because I didn't, you know, the doctor didn't tell me anything. So, you know, I just looked at him, and I was, like, trying to talk to him, like, I love you, I'm so sorry, you know, and the nurses were like, look, she's talking to him, oh my God. And I heard that, and I just was like, I remember hearing that while I was trying to say, like, goodbye to my baby. And I passed out. I tried to tell somebody, like, oh my God, I'm falling asleep, I can't hold him, and I passed out. Obviously, he'd fall on the ground or anything. Either somebody caught him or something, or he didn't fall or whatever, probably because he was wrapped up like a giant burrito. And
swaddling.
Right.
And for those that don't know, what they do now, and I mean, I don't know if they did it way back when, but now, when you have a baby, the very first thing they do is skin-to-skin contact, naked baby on mama's chest, and that's even before they suction the nose and the mouth, before they put the gunk on the eyes, before they cut the umbilical cord, any of that.
Obviously, I had to do the recovery, and they had to stitch me up, and I wasn't awake, and during my awake C-sections, they would put the baby on me still. So I know they did that, and I had a baby almost 13 months later. I had another baby, and that's exactly what they did. So I know that that's what they were supposed to do when they brought him to me.
It's a bonding
I also
thing.
know from research that I've done since I started coming to terms with, like, the trauma that the adoption did to me. Like, I did some research on it, you know, and was like, oh my God, like, they're even supposed to do that with adopted babies. Like, they're still supposed to get a minute with their mother, a few minutes chest to chest, because it's just good for them.
It's amazing for the baby to do that. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Speaking of the parent life,
right,
little interruption there. One of her kids just popped up.
Just 1 second.
So yeah, while she's taking care of that, but yeah, definitely the research does show that it's so important for the baby to have that skin to skin contact, even if it's just for the 1 minute. Just like if you, even if you don't want to breastfeed, every obstetrician out there, every gynecologist out there, they all will push really hard, at least the colostrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was not allowed to nurse. I asked the adoptive parents, like, afterwards, like, like a week after I had the baby, I had a friend contact me and be like, "How you doing? Are you sending him the milk, via cold USP, whatever it was called?" And I was like, "No, oh my God, should I be?" And she was like, "Yeah, it's really good for him." So, I'd still had the phone number at the time, and I called the parents, and I was like, and they freaked out. Like, I could hear it in their voice, but I didn't know why at the time. And they were like, What's going on? And I was like, "Nothing. Do you want me to send him breast milk? Oh my God, it's so good and important for him." And she was like, "Oh no, not at all. We don't need to pay for that."
And as you
was
did forget one thing about when you were in there doing the labor and all that, how the parents did show up and they were encouraging. Okay. Just making sure, because
one time, and then I passed out, and I didn't wake up again until the next day. It was, I don't know what time it was, obviously surgery. So I woke up, it was sunny. It was bright enough to be sunny. Sun was fully up. And I immediately was like, "I want to see my baby." And the nurse I thought that, so I clicked the nurse button, nurse clicking it, and nobody's fucking coming, right? So finally, after maybe 20 minutes of "I need a nurse," and they would, intercom me, "Are you hurting? Are you pain? No? Okay, we'll be right there." And 20 minutes go past, and a nurse finally comes in, followed by somebody else. I didn't know who it was, and she introduces herself. "Hi, I'm the hospital social worker. You're doing an adoption, so I'm just here to make sure that you don't change your mind. Do you have any questions?" And I was like, no, I guess. Can I see my baby before, I go home or whatever?
Which, again, a social worker shouldn't be saying that.
No, her job was to tell me, "I'm here to support you. If you want to keep your baby, I can help you do that." That's what her actual job should have been.
Yes.
But I'm thinking, okay, so when we did the adoption, we had to sign all these medical release forms, and they do background checks on us. So what I think happened is, so the doctor had access to the adoptive parents. She would call them and update them after my appointments. Again, something I didn't know about. And I think they chatted about my ex, and I think that they thought that I was totally down to be with this pedophile instead of keeping my baby, and I was trading my baby for a piece of shit, basically. And I can kind of see that, but that's not their job. Wasn't to judge.
Right.
So,
hey, I'm gonna go ahead and exchange a diamond for a hunk of shit.
Right. And so I was like, I just want to see my baby before he leaves or I leave or whatever. I don't really remember seeing him, and I really want to see him at least one time. And she goes, "Okay, it's going to take a little bit. You're on a different floor." And I was like, "Okay, what? That was a weird comment, And so the social worker leaves to go get the baby, basically. And the nurse stays, and she's doing a couple of taking care of my uterus shit, that they do. And, God, brain fart. Oh no. So she's doing my stuff, and I was like, "What floor am I on?" And she's all, "Oh, well, you're on the 3rd floor." And I was like, "There's only one maternity ward, isn't there?" And she goes, "Well, we have 2 floors. One for mothers of loss and one for mothers who raise their babies." And I was like, "Oh my God, what?" So I'm on the stillborn floor. Is he okay? Is he dead? And I'm start freaking out. She's like, "He's fine. We just didn't want you to hear any crying babies and possibly trigger you to be upset and maybe want your baby back or something." I was like, holy shit. Internally, what? What's fucking happening, And so by the time she gets all done with that, and we have this little weird chat, my mom's gone at the time. She was at the getting food. I don't blame her. She's at the hospital for holidays, and she had driven 10 hours just to come for the labor because she felt, awful because I was alone. And they bring, so my baby finally comes back. Yay, right? The social worker walks through the door, and a nurse walks through the door pushing my baby, and the adoptive parents walk through the door, and they all stayed and stared at me the whole time, except the adoptive dad. Well, the adoptive mom stood in the corner and kind of sobbed, quietly, and sort of looked at me and tried to nod every once in a while. And the dad just stood at the foot of my bed and just fucking 100 miles an hour, blah, 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 like everything he could think of. We're going to go to Hawaii for his first birthday. You won't believe this room. It's so beautiful. We're going to send you pictures of his room, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, I was just like so high. Like, I mean, let's be real. Like, I'm on opiates. I had just found out, like, earlier, like, apparently his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck 3 times. So every time I had pushed, the reason it hurt was because it was ripping out my uterus from inside out. So that's why I was screaming and, like, why it was so traumatic and why he almost died and all this crazy shit. So, anywho, they'd come in, and the social worker's staring at me in the corner. Actually, I have pictures of this. I posted them on my Facebook at the time, thinking that it was like, oh my god, my baby's here. Yay, and this is all the pictures I'm going to have. So, I have pictures of the social worker just fucking glaring at me. Like, I just have... And the whole time I got to spend with my baby that day was totally... like just violated. Like the parents in the room just like talking and crying and like, you know, I didn't have any support. The social worker's glaring at me, you know, there's nurses in and out. And like as soon as he starts crying, I was like, oh no, he's crying, where's his milk? And they were like, oh, we left it in his nursery. Are you done? Can we take him back? He probably needs to eat and sleep now. And like at the time, like I was like, oh yeah, definitely, I want you to go take care of him, you know, like go take care of him. And then as soon as they left, fucking passed out again because I was so high and
it sounds like the parents were there just to run interference. The dad was there to overwhelm you and make you not think about changing your mind. And I think the mom was there sobbing because she was afraid you were going to change your mind.
Yeah, and I would have, I think. I know that I would have kept him if I had gotten any chance to bond with him properly. Because I loved him and I wanted him from the start, you know, and I just dissociated with that because felt like I couldn't do it. And then, you know, all the people supposed to be there for you telling you can do it, the social worker, the adoption counselor is actually supposed to ask you, you know, are you sure you want to do this? Let's find you some resources and make sure it's not, you know, something you don't want to do. But
and I think that Bex has some things to chime in on too.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've gotten a couple comments. Brandy started out with just a few dots on the page, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing, and then followed up with what a shitty hospital. And we have Bob here saying this hospital needs some sensitivity training and to learn to communicate with patients because it sounds like a real butcher shop. I have to agree with both of those statements. I mean, the things that you went through are just horrible.
Hospital
and Richard
a year old when I gave birth.
Oof. And Richard had us trying not to giggle over the mics. Because he was saying, oh my God. Did your doctor show up late because he also went to the beach in Mexico?
I was holding back giggle snorts the entire time I'm reading that. I'm like, don't do it.
That was savage.
Like a hate group, like a hate support group for me, like right before my labor so that she could be like full rage potential when I needed her most. Yeah, that hospital, though, hospital was less than a year or two old when I gave birth. Brand new, state-of-the-art, everything.
You would expect that the staff would be sensitive then, because you'd expect it to be the best staff in the world.
Right? My labor room was like floor-to-ceiling windows on one side. It was like 20 feet wide, and it had its own private bathroom with a marble tub, like soaking jet tub and shit. Like, and okay, I was on state insurance at the time, but this hospital just... whatever, you know, it was just gorgeous, you know, and it was crazy that the doctors are like archaic, like the nurses and doctors are just like, well, you want some ghost blood to make you feel better, you know? Like,
well, we both know like, why. It's the state. It's that particular state. Like, seriously. It's like a magnet for just bad people. It really is.
Social worker. Oh, that helped me a lot. Maybe a cop would have been nice to me. Damn.
Wow.
I'm trying to be political. I'm just making a joke.
Yeah, we don't want to go political here. We do sometimes dip into philosophy a little bit, but yeah. I deal with enough politics on my day-to-day anyway.
The current state of affairs and the fact that my social worker was a total C word.
I was going to say a douche canoe works pretty well.
Yeah, we'll go with that. That could do. Yeah, no, and over the years, like, the adoptive parents, I've come to find out, like, I don't know, most of the listeners probably don't know what an ICPC is. It's an interstate adoption, blah, blah, blah. It's the only federal regulation for adoption. I can't find a copy for my kid that was adopted, which would render his adoption illegal because it would mean that the home study wasn't checked up on by either of the sending or receiving states. So the mom doesn't follow the... Damn it, dog's trying to eat it. Sorry, throw a pillow at him.
She just threw a pillow at her dog. That was awesome.
She just wants to lick the cats, but she scares them and like chases them and pins them down and licks them until they're like terrified and shaking because she's huge. Anywho, so like the adoption over the years, like the first 2 years, I'd get a couple pictures and letters every like 4 to 6 months, like, and it was sweet, like, and all the pictures were of him, and it was like him growing up, and it was always like, look how good we're doing, look how amazing, blah blah blah, and I was so happy with my adoption at the time because I was in severe denial about what it did to me, like those moments that I can remember in the hospital with the smells, the whole picture, how I can picture it all, and I don't even have to picture it. How when I go to hold one of my nieces or nephews or whatever in the hospital and I have a full-on flashback, like I had no idea for years. Like I had PTSD. I have PTSD from it, you know, because I almost died giving birth, and then I lost my kid. And then 2 years goes by in this adoption, and I thought it was going great. And during this time, I had asked, can I come see him? No, honey. We're trying to bond with him still. We're just really trying to focus on bonding with him because it's so much more complicated since we're not his natural parents. This was like 6 months later. It was kind of like, at the time, I was kind of like, what the fuck? He's a baby. He's not going to know me. It's been 6 months. I just want to, like, poke him and, like, squish him a little. He's just a little baby. Like, come on. What's the deal? And then, you know, a couple months go by. My grandma's in the same state as him. Hey, can grandma come visit? No, he's bonding with us right now. Fuck, like I hadn't even seen my grandma for a while, and like we weren't close. It was just she just wanted to meet him. Absolutely not, hands down, no. So a few months after that instance, they moved thousands of miles across water. I don't want to like be super specific and out them for legal reasons, obviously. They will sue me. I have been informed for many years, and after the treatment I've received from the mother, I put nothing beyond her. So 2 years goes by, we start getting a little more distant. I get less and less information. 3 years goes by, even less. 4, you know, at this point, I hadn't heard from him in a couple months, like 6 months, which was about the time they would contact me then. So the 6 month mark goes by, nothing. 9 months, nothing. A year, nothing. Turns 5. And like at this point, I had never even received like a Mother's Day card or like a birthday card from or for him. Like I had not been allowed to send him anything, talk to him, see him, except for in pictures. And that was it. They did send me one video of him when he was 2. I don't know. It was just him jumping in the water. I couldn't even like hear him or anything. Anyway, so the 5 or 6 years goes by, and I'm just like, 5 years goes by, and I'm like, where the fuck are these people? Like, this is an open adoption, legally an open adoption. I'm aware that adoptive parents can close adoption at any time for any reason. Obviously, I'm an adoptive parent now. But they weren't supposed to disappear. They're not supposed to ghost you. Like, they're supposed to at least tell you. And the agency is, I called them, like, where the fuck are these people okay? Like, should I be looking for, like, a grave? Like, I was terrified, you know, I hadn't heard from them. And, like, worst case scenario, because I had developed, get this, anxiety by then. So,
surprise.
Right?
Imagine that.
You know, it turns out I've always been anxious, like, my entire life, but it really tipped the scales at that point. And, you know, finally I found her on Facebook, and I messaged her, and at the time Facebook didn't have, like, a one where it goes into a different inbox. It just had one inbox, and you got that notification right away. I messaged her, and I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I gave you a human being, and you can't even tell me how tall he is? Like, what the fuck? Like, why would you do that to me? And she goes, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We moved again back from, you know, the faraway place they were in. We moved back from there, you know, back into the main U.S. and we've just been so busy. I couldn't contact you. I just didn't have the time, and I kind of forgot for a couple months, and I was just like taken aback.
How
like,
do you forget someone gave you a baby? Seriously.
How do you look in my child's eyes? Like, and now that I've seen pictures of him, and he's older, you know, he's not a teenager yet, but he's older, and he is my twin. I can put side by sides of him and me together at the same age. You can barely tell us apart. And the same with my youngest son. Actually looks just like him too, and it's hilarious. Like, Richard couldn't tell them apart for a long time. When I would show pictures, you know, people are just like, oh, holy shit. But, so, you know, she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, I'll update you right now. And she sends me a bunch of shit that was on her phone, you know, and like half the pictures are selfies, like where she's like squished up against this kid's face. Like, and like a couple months goes by and I'm like, I message her again. And I was like, hey, I noticed you didn't send me pictures of the dad. Is he okay? Did he die? Because you haven't said anything about him in like 2 or 3 years. And I'm really worried now. And she goes, oh no, we just divorced and I was just ashamed to tell you. And I was like, oh, well, one time I married a pedophile, so I'm not judging you. Like, I literally told her that. And she did not think it was funny. Turns out she does not have a sense of humor. My trauma is funny. Come on, it happened to me. I'm allowed to make fun of it.
Right. I mean, and humor is a great
deal sometimes.
You know, and I was just trying to level with her. Like, for real, like, I wasn't trying to judge her. Like, I was just trying to get back in contact with my kid. I'm not trying to be a bitch to her. Like, I was like, whatever.
Right. I mean, so, you were doing a lighthearted jab at, hey, I did something even worse. I'm not judging you.
And she was like, I don't appreciate that kind of talk. And I was like, sorry. Whoopsie. You know, I was grateful as messenger because I laughed a lot. And she was just like, I don't appreciate that, and, you know, I'll get back to you, and blah, blah, blah. So I had started following her on Facebook, and apparently she doesn't follow her notifications because I clicked that follow, and I was following her for, like, months. And all of a sudden I was like, I wonder what would happen if I liked one of her posts. And I liked the post, and goddamn, she blocked me so fucking fast. Holy shit. Like, we didn't pass a whole minute before she blocked me on everything. And she blocked my whole family. My whole family, like every single one. It was intense. So like 6 months goes by and I'm like, I was really hurt. Like, I went into a really deep depression. Like, I was like super suicidal. Like, I've lost my son like 3 times by now. All I wanted was some fucking pictures. Come on. And she just blocked me. And eventually, like, a couple months goes by and I write this bitchy letter to the dad, and it was just mean. I was like, you guys are fucking horrible. You stole my son. I know the adoption's illegal, and I didn't come after you because I wanted him to be safe and happy and stable and shit. And I understand why you don't want me to meet him because, you know, his story is rough. Like, his beginnings are not ideal. And that's going to be hard on a kid, you know? So I get it. I would get why they want to hide that from him. I would get why they want to protect him from that. But they hide it from him instead. So, you know, a couple months goes by, I don't hear from the guy. I don't hear from the guy forever. And I made a fake Facebook and started following her again because I'm not an idiot and I wanted to see my son. And I followed her, and she had been posting these blogs. So I start reading these blogs, and it's like, you know, my kid was like 6, 7 at the time, and they were like, 10 years ago, I was a hardcore alcoholic for at least, you know, 10 years or something stupid like that. And I was like, hold on a second, like doing math. Like, she was an alcoholic for years before she adopted my son. Hardcore alcoholic. She admits on this blog. I was a hardcore drinker. I would drink vodka from a Coke bottle while we were going to church. Like, oof, that's something to admit while you have somebody else's child. You've been trusted to raise somebody else's child. What could go wrong? And
from my knowledge, if you're a raging alcoholic, you cannot adopt.
No, so she lied on her paperwork. So I'm reading these blogs, right? It gets even more intense. And she lied on her paperwork about being an alcoholic. I find out she was actually a smoker, too, which is one of the main reasons why I was, like, so disappointed in myself and couldn't mother, was because I was, like, a chain smoker for like half the pregnancy, and I still smoked through it. Okay, my kid was super healthy. I only smoked like 1 cigarette a day. It was all I could do for myself. Come for me. I don't even care anymore. It's been, you know, way long ass time. So,
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, but Richard just got me with that church is a euphemism for that beach in Mexico.
Yeah, and if you saw my face, I just grinned and turned my head to not laugh.
I'm not
I
following
turned back to the chat and I lost it. I'm sorry.
You'll have to tell me what he said in a minute.
He just said church is a euphemism for that beach in Mexico.
Right? For real. Okay, this bitch is like 6'2" and like 100 pounds too. And
My God,
like,
she's an inch taller than me.
She's huge. She's a giant. I'll get to why in a minute. There's a reason.
Brandy says, "Oh my God, I can only imagine how that's affected you."
Right? So she's ignored me. I've been waiting for the dad's response. I'm reading these blogs. I'm an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic. I resented my son for years because he didn't fill the deep hole in my soul that I thought he would. And, you know, it goes on and on. Like, I was so miserable, and now I'm happy because I'm a life coach. And it was just so sick.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry.
Toxic positivity to the extremist extreme, okay? And then, like...
I have not met a life coach that I've actually liked. Just to throw that out there. I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there's good ones out there. But so many horrible people pick that up and they're like, I'm a piece of shit, and I'm going to help you with your life.
Right, yeah. So she's complaining, and then she gets to this one blog. I get to this one blog, and it's, you know, my kid was diagnosed autistic. And, okay, her career for 10 years before she adopted him was teaching autistic elementary students to read. That was her only job for 10 years.
So how does she not realize this?
So he was diagnosed, like, more than one hand of years after they had him, okay?
Yeah, usually they wait until about 3 for the diagnosis.
Right. I noticed at 5 with my, or 4, and it took like a year and a half to get, like, you know, into stuff for one of my home children. Just a weird way to differentiate from my adopted kid. I don't know. That's how it goes in my mind. So, I'm reading all this shit, and she's like, I resented his autism diagnosis, and, you know, I just wanted him to be normal. You know, we just wanted a normal child when we adopted, and we went through all the work to make sure the parents were physically fit and not mentally ill, and blah, blah, blah. And first of all, bitch, I gained 90 pounds when I got pregnant with that child. I was 90 pounds heavier on his birthday or Labor Day or whatever, you know? So I was not physically fit. I was just basically strung out, okay? That was not being physically fit.
Right. And to circle back really fast, as a life coach, it's really shitty to not realize that you can't fill a hole within by something that you find outside.
Right. So she was trying to say in her blog, like, that she had realized that, you know, years and years after she had adopted him. And just awful stuff, just continuously awful stuff. And eventually I found one that admitted she has a genetic disease and her lifespan is not of a regular person. She probably won't live to 60.
Yeah, another red flag for adoption.
Yeah, that's a straight denial. That's not even a red flag for them. They won't work around that because they don't want to traumatize an adopted child twice. As if they can help it,
right?
Obviously.
I mean, if they're gonna die before the kid's an adult, that's a bad thing,
right? So she has the same disease that her dad died of on her birthday. On her, I don't want to say it because I don't want to get too specific about her and get sued. So her dad died on her birthday, and this year she's the same age he was when he died, and my son is the same age she was when her dad died. And
of the same disease.
Have the same disease. They're the same height, and so with this disease, you are not supposed to. Number one thing you should never ever do is lift weights. 2 is like cardio, treadmill, run, none of that shit. You probably shouldn't even hike anything vigorous. No contact sports. Like, if she gets in a car accident, her eyes will, like, pop out of her, like, her retinas dislocate with, like if somebody punched her in the head, her retinas would just dislocate because there's no glue in her body to hold anything together as far as her joints and organs are concerned. So her dad is basically his heart ripped open. It's so sad. I feel so bad for her because she's so traumatized from it and never recovered and never did the work to like truly recover. She just put it away.
I mean, it basically sounds like this disease just limits or eliminates your ability to produce collagen.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
And smoking eliminates collagen. That's why smokers age fast.
And alcohol.
Why drinkers age fast.
So 10 years of smoking and drinking for somebody with this heart disease, and then she had already adopted him. And then she found out she gets an extra couple years. She's not going to die as soon as she thought. She gets an extra couple years, and she gets to live not even 5 decades. Put it that way, was her lifespan. And she's very close to that, in my opinion. She's just very, very ill, and, you know, she's not supposed to do anything, basically. She's supposed to live a sedentary lifestyle, because those type of people, they don't gain weight anyway, so they don't need to exercise, really, for heart health, because it will explode their heart.
Right, and also with no collagen, it's not like you're going to produce body fat either, because body fat's usually stored in the collagen.
Exactly. So they don't produce body fat. She's extremely tall. She has every single symptom. Certain deformities. I'm not going to name them because I don't want people like ripping on other people's deformities and shit. But like, she's got all the symptoms. You know, it's very severe form of the disease. Her father died from it. What happened was, I heard that he was like weightlifting in the garage. I read it on her blog thing. She deleted all her blogs, by the way. When I contacted the dad, I ripped her a new one with all those horrible blogs, and he also ripped her a new one for it, I think, because they disappeared off the internet, even though I got my screenshots.
I was going to say, I hope you got screenshots.
Oh, screenshots are forever.
Yep.
There's
like, it's disgusting. Like, the webpage was like bright pink, and like all the letters were pink, and I'm like, so unprofessional.
And I'll bet you dollars to donuts, if you go to the Internet Wayback Machine, archive.org, you'll find it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. She didn't even properly delete it from her Facebook timeline for like a year. So I guarantee you she didn't properly erase the website. So she could die at any time. Her dad died from basically, you know, over-exercising. He had that heart disease, and he was working out. He went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you need to go to surgery, and he died. And she does the exact same hobby, which is the number one thing you're not supposed to do, which is weightlift. You cannot weightlift with this disease. There are tons and tons of people who do and say, well, I'm not dead from it, so it's fine.
Survivor's bias.
There are lots of cases of professionals in this division who quit because they find out they have this disease, and that's why their body type fits this kind of sport so well. She could die at any moment from doing it, and she does it 3 to 5 hours a day.
It's
and
like,
just it, like, I'm gonna die someday anyway. Might as well just whatever. At least I'm living. And it's like
YOLO.
Yeah, you know, you get that kind of way if you're, you know, we got 6 months to live. You have cancer. Go do everything, you know. But like, you don't live like that day to day when you have a child, and you don't have a certain date. Like, they're not telling you 6 months. They're telling you you could die in 10 years or so, or not. We don't know.
Yeah.
Depends on the person, you know, and how you treat your body. And she goes, oh, treat it like shit. Got it. Yeah. Like,
right.
Shit.
Do what's healthy for everybody else, but absolutely devastating for me.
Yeah, and the reason that it bothers me isn't so much that she wants to improve herself or that she wants to have something. It bothers me because she's going to traumatize my child again. You know, she's just begging for it, basically. If your doctor I'm allergic to apples, and I will not go out and buy one just because I like the taste. I'm not going to sacrifice. Oh, I'll just risk it this one time because I miss eating apples. Although I do miss eating apples.
What's really funny is one of my best friends, who's actually was a guest on the show, is deathly allergic to apples, and it's his favorite flavor in the world. Now, if the apple is cooked to the nth degree, he can eat it, but he'll get like tingly and a little bit numb. But if it's a raw apple...
I'm literally allergic to apples, too. And
Yeah.
I've never heard of anybody else being allergic to them.
Yeah, so this is weird that I know somebody. Yeah. But like he decided one time it was like a Honey Crisp because that's his favorite, and he sat there and did itty bitty slices and would eat that. It took him like 8 hours to eat a quarter of an apple, and he kept himself right on the verge of dying while doing it.
Oh my god. All I want is McDonald's apple pie, but I am not gonna, I'm just not gonna risk it. It's just not worth it.
Oh, there's one time we went out and to get donuts, and he decided to get a Bear Claw. Now, some Bear Claws are not fruit filled. This one had fresh apple filling, and he took a bite. He's like, "Oh my god, this is the best Bear Claw ever." Went to go take a second bite and saw the apples, and he was like, "Oh shit."
Right? Oh shit, that's how I feel.
But it was cooked.
Whenever I go to a family event of ours, and my lovely mother-in-law makes a fruit salad, she just always throws as many apples as she can in there.
She really does.
Sadly.
It's like it's all apples with a couple of grapes and maybe a strawberry and a touch of kiwi.
Right? That's pretty much what it is. I would love that because I love apples, and I'm just always like sad at the fruit salad.
I love your mother-in-law, my aunt.
After I had heard what he had gotten diagnosed, and one of my kids at home had gotten diagnosed, I was talking to my kid one day, and I was like, "We're so similar." Whoa, light bulb. And I went in, and I got diagnosed with autism as well, and it was kind of a really it was a weird moment because my kid that I've never met is the most similar to me out of all my kids. The kid that I don't have, he's my physical twin. We have we've never met, we've never talked, all the same interests, do all the same things as kids, act the same way. It's weird.
And here's something else that we have in common. My first child, I did an open adoption, and yeah, we didn't talk until she was 15. I went and visited her, and we've been chatting ever since. She just turned 25 yesterday, and she is pregnant and is going to make me a granddad in November.
I know, you told everybody you were going to be a grandpa, and that you didn't, so they made fun of you.
Yeah, and out of all... It's like, and all my kids look a lot like me, but none of them look more like me than her. I mean, she is a carbon copy. And what's so crazy... Weird. The crazy thing is, she has a sister who has a different dad that looks exactly like her. Which looks a hell of a lot like me.
Right? That's super weird. You're like, I'm not comfortable with this.
And what's funny is and the nature of both of them, that other kid might as well have been stored away sperm. Because the nature, same kind of thing, so much like me.
I feel so bad for some adopted kids because they never get that, oh my gosh, I'm so much like you. My kid especially, he's brown eyes, and the only thing he's got in common with his parents is their height, and they're all white. All three of them are white, but he's the only one, and so his parents are divorced, obviously now. He's the only one in either family with brown eyes from grandparents down. Obviously, so adopted. Sad, and
well,
all the other kids are regular-sized, normal-sized children, and all my kids are projected to be over 6 foot, except for the last one, who's a midget. But that's only because instead of using his stored energy to grow, he uses it to do backflips off the couch. And
also, your husband's a midget, so.
Yes, that's very true. I don't know how our other kids got so damn tall. Right.
I can tell you, actually, your husband's grandfather on the mom's side.
Oh, okay. See, I never
he
wasn't him, and
he wasn't tall, but all of his brothers were 6'1", 6'2", 6'3".
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah, he was short, but all of his brothers were tall, and that's where the height comes from. Because you look at that whole family; they're all freaking short.
4'11".
Right.
What?
Right, and then the grandkids show up, like me, and all that. Right. And there's some height.
Right. All my kids are projected over 6. All three of the first couple are all projected over 6 foot, and then the ones I birthed, and then the little one that I birthed is just the maniac midget.
And what's funny is you actually got to meet my oldest son, Would you believe that
Yeah.
we are actually not? He went to the camping trip with us.
Which one? Because I was only there for a couple days.
I'm going to mute really fast so I can share the name safely. So anyway, you
Right,
met.
I didn't know which one.
Yeah, so you met that one. He looks a lot like me. He acts a lot like me. There is no blood between us.
That's so crazy.
But I've been his dad since he was 13 months.
Right. That's how my husband is with our quote oldest, because that kid just recently rejected their biological parent that has had full access for their whole life.
Literally the same thing.
Yeah, just rejected.
Flat out rejected bio dad.
Like, I ain't going there no more, and I'll fight you if you make me, and I'm almost your size. And I was like, I can take you down. And then it turned into a wrestling match, but I didn't make them go. But so I was leading around to our diagnosis, because the diagnosis that shook me kind of was the autism. Like, he's autistic, I'm autistic, and it's just so like we always have so much in common, and we don't even know each other, and it's strange. But I got so many other diagnoses from that appointment. It was literally a full day appointment, and I was diagnosed with over, like, oh god, let's see. So the autism, obviously, from birth, duh. So autism, and then from the adoption and my first husband's just general existence, I guess, and abuse of me mentally, like the mental manipulation, is something that I really don't think I've fully recovered from even now, because I still don't trust. Like, I still am like quick to be like, what's going on? My super square amazing husband will get like a text message from work at 1 a.m. and it takes everything in me to be like, that's just work. I ain't getting up. I ain't looking at it, because that's not healthy, and
Right.
I can still see it, but I got PTSD from the adoption and marriage, and anxiety and depression, and like, with my autism diagnosis, I got some like OCD, and like they diagnosed me with like, they said part of my anxiety is autism encompasses that, but mine is so severe that it's just part of my another diagnosis, and probably parts into my PTSD, my depression and PTSD and anxiety and panic disorder, all like fit into one. And the doctor was really clear, like, it's pretty obvious, like, when you acquired all this stuff, and your life has been really stable since a year or so after I was born, so you shouldn't, obviously nothing bad has happened to you, but you've developed all these symptoms since then. So, they, like, it really gave me, like, it made me crazy. Like,
Right.
I guess I'm certified, maybe, because, like, I have so many diagnoses now that, I see counselor weekly. Thank God.
Good.
I love her. And she's so amazing. She just cracks me up. But and I have to take all these meds, and the meds are rough. Like, it's rough to, because I have to switch all the time. And I don't know if you might have noticed, like, my train of thought today isn't as sharp as I'd like it to be, because I was switched to med over 2 weeks ago. I switched on to a different one. And the one I switched off of has been giving me mini seizures the whole time since I stopped taking it, and they're called brain zaps.
Yep,
But
familiar
what
with
they
that.
are is mini seizures, and it's just like a tiny electrocution feeling in your brain and your whole face for me, and especially in my mouth. And the doctor's like, totally normal, to be expected. You'll get over that in a couple more weeks, maybe, at the most. And I was just like, what? Because
How is this normal?
And I can't remember what we were talking about. Are you sure it's what? Are you sure it's not serious? Like, whoa. And that's something they really don't tell you. Like, when you start taking all these meds, like, be careful. Look at the side effects of getting off of them, because that has been
the side effects while you're on them sometimes don't even rival the side effects of leaving them.
Yeah. And, like, I've done a lot of drugs in my days. Like, I've experimented a lot. Obviously before I had my children, my firstborn,
when you were young and wild, you were young and wild.
Yeah, I was really, really, really wild until he was born, and then after he was born, I was not like wild, but just desperate to get my hands on anything that would make me feel better, apparently. And
Right, you're
I
trying to
ended up getting pregnant
self-medicate.
really fast. Thank God, because my other kid just saved me from spiraling further. And but like, it's just pretty wild, like how long it's been and stuff. But
And what's funny is at the camping trip, you barely like even talked to me. It's almost like you were avoiding me, and I'm not taking it personally at all.
No, it's just I felt really uncomfortable around everybody there.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say you got thrown into a tightly knit group that's really big, and we're pretty tight.
And like with the autism diagnosis being pretty like recent of the last few years, I'm really self-conscious about my social skills now, and it's made my socializing worse. So I was already a poor socializer, and when I went to get my diagnosis, my husband came with me, and the doctor said, "What's different about her? What makes you sure that she's got something different about her, like autism?" Because he was totally down for me getting a diagnosis, which I wasn't worried about because he's so damn square, and all you rednecks in your family, I was worried about.
Yeah, we got a few.
He was totally down. He was like, if you want to explore whatever you feel like, go do it. And he went with me, and she was like, "Do you think she does, X, Y, Z?" And he was like, "Hell yeah." And then the doctor was like, "In your own words, though, tell me why she's, different from other people." And he's like, "I just can't. Like, I can't even explain how differently she socializes and doesn't understand when people are so done with the conversation that she just talk and talk and talk. I'll talk all night. I have no problems with it." And like I get so uncomfortable now because I'll start to be more aware that I'm making other people uncomfortable, or they don't want to talk anymore, or they need to go and they're not trying to be rude, And now I'll get like, I'll just try to avoid it at all.
That sounds a lot like me. That sounds a lot like me. I'll talk your ear off.
Yeah, me too. You give me a subject I like or I know a lot about, and I'll talk all night. And that was actually a problem and part of the reason for my autism diagnosis, which was, she brought up, she's all, "So, she's talking to my husband. Is there something that she's super passionate about that you can't get her to shut up talking about? Does that ever happen?" And he's like, "Which subject?"
That's okay.
What does she like the most? And he picked one, and I was like, "Oh my God, you won't believe this!" And just like went off for like, I could tell like after a few minutes, like she was like looking at me, and she started to like interrupt me, and I was like, "But wait, I have to tell you." And she's like, "Okay, but..."
Okay, this is really hitting home with me now. I just might need to go get myself checked.
Well, it's free. I actually had to be seen twice, because the first person they sent me to was an older male, and he literally was like, "Oh, you're here for being checked for autism? Where's your handler?" And I was like, "I drove myself." Like, "Hey, doggy."
Excuse me?
Yeah, it's called a spectrum for a reason.
Right. And like he was just so rude, and then he just gave me a couple pieces of paper, and I was out of there within 15 minutes.
So he sounds like he was still going with the 1970s definition of autism.
Definitely. And the autism is really gender biased still. The diagnosis is hard to get for women because all of the studies for the diagnosis was done on like little boys, like 5 to 12-year-old boys. So it's really, really hard for women to get a diagnosis.
And with how hyperactive that age group of boys is, it's surprising that not 100% of boys are given that diagnosis.
Yeah, and that's something that they cite when they're trying to get you to... Hold on, I'm just going to mute so that...
Yeah, I mean, we also had Shelly T, who was on, talking about autism just a couple episodes back, which was really awesome. And what's actually kind of cool right now, so while you're muted, I'm just talking. My daughter, my youngest daughter, she's in speech therapy, and her speech therapist is really big on autism. There's a bunch of autistic posters for awareness in the office, and I found it's because one of her kids is autistic. So it's been really awesome, having all this stuff coming up. And you might want to tell your husband to put some clothes on.
His pants are tan, okay?
All of a sudden, I'm very grateful that my chat screen is open and not the video screen.
I love my cousins, like, seriously. I have the best family.
I'd be nervous at a family function with the way they all act.
Right? We all...
Especially married into one of these four.
Well, we all tongue kiss each other, too, so,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Why do I miss out on that?
God.
My family is awesome, seriously, and I'm glad that you're a part of it. It was so weird on how I know that we met at Grandma's birthday.
And funeral.
No, I was actually sick. I was supposed to be a pallbearer, but I wound up...
Barbecue?
Yeah, I went to the barbecue afterwards.
Okay.
And I hung out all night there, for the most part. But no, it was during the grandma's funeral, I wound up getting really sick. Like, both ends, nonstop. Both of my kids got it. By the time we got home, my wife had it too. It was awful. And it wasn't really food poisoning because we all ate different stuff, so,
Right. It's the flu.
Yeah. But no, it's like, I know we had met a couple of times, but it wasn't until this podcast that we really got to know each other. And it sucks because, like, your husband, he came over to my place after, coming home from a deployment. And he just stopped by and hung out for an evening. And it was just awesome. He just showed up one day.
He's the friendliest fucker. God, he could make friends anywhere. It's disgusting.
I do that too.
for me, someone who's had like one of my best friends has been friends with me for 22 years, and I say one of my two friends, and I'm not like down on it. Like it doesn't bother me because I'm not built to manage that many relationships. I'm managing my family relationships, and my friend relationships kind of just go to the wind, and hopefully they stick around until my kids are old enough that I can, focus on that, because it's just not programmed into me. And like I struggled with it my whole life, like, and that was part of, really part of my first husband kind of manipulating me is like I think he kind of knew, like, predators can spot the outcast, they can spot weakness.
Oh yeah.
It's in every documentary you can ever see. Especially sexual predators. And that's what he is.
Oh, yeah. Sexual predators tend to be narcissists and sociopaths at the same time.
I also think it a lot had to do when I was 20, I looked 14, maybe. And I think that had
that
a lot
explains
to do
a lot.
Is choosing me, and because I still get carded. I can't go buy shit. I can't even get a lighter without getting carded. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I have gray hair. Like, and it's not dyed. It's just the one patch. It's not attractive or anything. Like, come on.
You got the Lillian Munster patch going on.
Yeah, I do. I have it right on top. It's just one stripe. It's like storm stripe. It's too bad I can't control the weather. I could put all these
that would be awesome.
freaking fires out.
Well, you're not Pudge.
No, you definitely do look young. I mean, if I were to shave, I would get carded again. And I'm like in my 40s, and I don't get carded as much as I used to, but when I was like in my 30s, it was nonstop. But I got to the point where I was like, I love you, as I hand over my ID.
I don't.
I remember the first time I ever saw you when you were clean shaven, and I was like, okay, you're a different person now.
Oh, yeah. My whole face transforms when I shave.
Right? That's funny.
And what's funny is I don't look like a part of the family. I look like more on my mom's side of the family if I shave. When I have the beard, I look like my dad's side of the family.
You look like my husband's brother, and it's the weirdest thing, because you guys aren't like that close. Like, I know you're related, but you're cousins. You shouldn't look like brothers like you do. It's kind of weird. Like,
it's that
because you're not.
Those genes are strong.
Apparently. Yeah.
But yeah, no. So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody how many pages your diagnosis was?
38. Yeah, 38 pages long, and but it included like a lot of my like trauma stuff. So, but not like the stories, but just like, you know, this diagnosis and this is why too. So yeah, it took 38 pages to fill it up. I have it in our file cabinet. I made a funny TikTok with it once. It's pretty good.
I might have to
any
get.
likes. That's okay.
I might have to get TikTok again. I deleted it after they were calling for the ban. I was just like, you know what? I just don't even want to mess with it.
The data mining shit. I was like, I don't even have money. Data mine all my shit. I don't care. Pay me for it.
Right. Well, I mean, and there was actually a there's a podcaster. Not really. It's more like a video, like a vlog guy who does a lot of news stuff that I really pay attention to a lot. Like I really just this guy's on point. And he pointed out something very, very... That was the reason I actually deleted it. He's like, look, it's one thing when an American company it can start data mining you. Like, if Facebook has shadow profiles for people who don't have profiles. Basically, you install the app. One of the first things it asks is, hey, can we look through your contacts and try to find other people? Well, what they don't tell you is if there's any contacts that they find that don't have profiles, they create a shadow profile.
That's crazy.
And then if you have a mutual friend who has like a photo tagged of that person, now they have a picture for that shadow profile.
That's crazy.
And if someone else has a location, now they have a location for that shadow profile.
Right.
And, it's scary enough that an American company has this. TikTok's allowing the Chinese government to build these profiles. The next type of war we have is going to be a war of intelligence and using the internet, and it's going to target individuals all over the place. Like, there'll be like thousands of individuals that'll suddenly get targeted for no apparent reason, and their lives are going to start getting ruined because they're going to be impersonating you. They're going to be putting up all this false information about you, and they're going to be able to throw in just enough truth. That's the fear.
Just enough to make it look true.
Yeah, that's the fear. And that's why I was like, you know what? Bye. Now, if Microsoft winds up buying out TikTok, well, Microsoft already has a shadow profile on me. I'll just get TikTok again.
All their servers are on American soil now, and they got American lawyers and shit now, so I think they panicked and, like, kind of switched stuff around just enough to make people keep it and to make the orange fart shut the fuck up.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I don't like data mining. I really don't. Another good example is a couple nights ago, and for the people that have me on my personal Facebook, you saw me bitch about it.
Oh, yeah.
My wife was talking to me about purple mattresses, and that she found another mattress called Nectar, which is cheaper, it has better reviews, it has a longer warranty, and all this other stuff. The very next day, every single ad I got on my websites, on Facebook, on everything. Purple, Nectar, LOL, everything. And I didn't search it. I didn't get any text messages about it. But my phone was being bombarded. And it's still happening.
Right? Yeah, I could think of something and sometimes we'll get an ad for it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, all the ads for I get a lot of kids' clothes ads. No idea why.
It's not like you have any kids.
I know, I have a million. I brought 2 extra to the grandma's funeral. You didn't go, but good lord, like, I had foster kids at the time, and I had to bring these, like, just, like, random ass kids with me that were like, ooh, a party, and I was like, sure, you're 3, you don't care.
Right.
And, no, the freaking kids' clothes ads, like, they're creepy, because it's not just like, oh, here's some, here's the Gap and their shit. It's like, here's a picture of a really, really cute shirt that you might have imagined in your head or thought that it would be cute. And here's a really specific picture of it that you should buy. And I'm like, I'll scroll through the ad to the next piece of clothing. And it's like, oh, that would fit my other kid and look nice. Oh, that would fit my other kid and look nice. Oh, no, this is all perfect for our family. And then I had to stop looking through the ads because I was just like, this is too accurate and too perfect. And it's creepy. Yeah. Because, like, they're just, it'd be different if it was targeted ads like, kids' clothes store. But, like, the fact that they're providing links to specific clothing that my kids actually like is really creepy.
Yeah.
and my kids aren't like super normal, so.
Well,
It's
I
not
mean, in this
Elsa
family.
here. You don't got no Frozen over here. This is
Oh, meanwhile,
weird.
my daughter, that's all she lives for is Frozen. Like,
My daughter.
at least she likes Frozen 2 better than Frozen.
My daughter is like the gothest
Oh.
kid that I've ever seen. That's not quite,
She
not
is.
quite to be goth yet, but good lord, all her clothes are black.
Yep, and the purple hair and man, she mean mugs everybody.
Oh yeah, and then the constant like phone. Ugh. Yep.
But does anybody have any questions for S? Because I mean,
Yeah.
that was a
The
big
last
dump.
comment we had was "Holy cow," and I think that was when she was talking about her diagnosis and
Yeah, the
how,
35-page,
how
whatever.
big it was.
Yeah, and there was a literal 30-minute gap between comments.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's just your story is really fascinating, and I'm sure that we have a number of listeners. They're just all just silently listening because I mean,
I think people
seriously,
would
holy
just be
cow.
riveted, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm actually worried. Ivania, are you out there? Are you okay, sweetie?
If she's not, she will finish the episode. It sometimes takes her an episode here, an episode there.
Yeah.
Pedophiles really trigger her. For obvious,
Yeah,
no,
if you
I
know her,
understand
it's
that.
obvious why.
So I would just like anybody that's listening, like I'm sure that you have gathered enough, like you could gather enough information to you could find the people that I've talked about or myself or whatever. All I'd like to ask is that you don't put me in a position that I have to defend myself or coming on to here or speaking my story so that I don't have to end up being silenced by them, because I guarantee you the adoptive mother will be pissed when she finds this, because you are I save everything. Like, I save everything. I have files and files of photos. All of our communication has been saved for my son. I saved every.
We were really good at not giving any kind of true geographic locations. We gave a region at one point, and that's it. So, and also we don't have your name. You know, they may know my name, but my family is so freaking big. Good luck finding out who you are.
Right? No, for real. And then, I know that the way that these people are, like the adoptive dad is very, he's just old school. He wrote me back eventually, and he reopened communication, which was really wonderful. He still refuses any actual contact. But I do get the communication from the dad twice a year now. He's very, very prompt about it, and he is not going to check it in between. So if I were to go to the hospital and my dying wish was to see him, I would not get that. But I do at least get my photos, and I pelt him with questions in between him checking, our private chat that we have, and he'll answer them, at his own pace. I ask him to measure him yearly so that I can see how his growth scale looks because I put it on my wall. I like to see it.
Right.
I just want him to know someday, like, if he does come back or he wants to come back or he wants to visit, like, we always included him because we always loved him, and, it was never a secret or anything, because I don't want it to be a negative experience, more negative than it's already been,
Right. And I can say firsthand that getting back together with my kid was one of the greatest things ever. And I hope that you get that. I really do. And again, because it's still open, as long as he knows that you're out there, he's probably going to try to find you. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I know that he knows he's adopted because this woman accidentally posted on her Facebook on my birthday 2 years after he was adopted. How do I tell my adopted child they're adopted? Because, he was a toddler, so it's not like she was like, as a tiny baby, you're adopted. Like, don't forget. So she searched that, and it ended up on her public records for Facebook, and she just never deleted it. And it was just something that you could see publicly forever. And I would, eventually it was like, bro, this is public. Like, I can see this. And
one day, he's going to go on Facebook and find that.
Yeah, she actually follows me as well. Up until a few weeks ago, all my social media stories, I would swipe up to see who watches them, just because, I don't know, I'm just interested. and I'll get reactions or whatever and see who did them or whatever. So for like the last like 6 months, I've had one other on all my stories that are public, and it doesn't tell you who it is. And it was one other, and I pointed it out a couple weeks ago on my story. I was like, I can see you. I know you're watching me.
I remember this one.
You can just come in and say hi, and I haven't had them sent by since. And, I can't imagine anybody else who thinks I'm that interesting. Like, my ex-husband isn't going to stalk me anymore. I served my purpose for him, which was delaying his sentencing.
All right, and you don't look 14 anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
You look 15 now.
I'm sure he's moved on to other young girls and gotten much smarter about it because he hasn't been charged in, his whole decade of parole. But
oh, don't worry. If he's
there's no way a high-risk sex offender goes 10 years without offending when he lives next door to a ski resort, literally across the street. It's on his registry. And it's crazy to me. But
he's trying for those underage ski bunnies.
I don't know why a random stranger, nobody random, is gonna just look up my Facebook to see my story. Consistently every day for months and months on end. So I threw that out there, and I threw some clues out there. I posted some pictures that I wasn't given of him in not very revealing photos, but you could tell they weren't, you couldn't really see him, but you could tell they were a boy, and if you had taken those photos, you would know that you took those photos. And when I posted that, because I don't post any of his information publicly, like I'm not trying to break any laws, expose him, or anything like that. I was just trying to see who was stalking me. And, it was the mom, I'm sure of it, because I posted the photo, and then all of a sudden it wasn't public anymore. Because she does post some things publicly on Facebook that I can find, because the dad forced her to unblock me on everything. She's not friends with me, but he told her, and I read the letter, it was like, you need to unblock her. You're acting totally ridiculous and not like a very good mother. And I was like, damn, thank God somebody said it.
Yeah. The honeymoon is over. They're divorced.
Yeah. She posts pictures of my kid having an autistic meltdown. He was acting like an asshole, so I had to punish him. And I'm like, what the fuck? You can't post your kids' punishments on the internet?
Do you know how many people have had their lives ruined doing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she was a life coach at the time, and her life coaching business failed. She admitted a couple weeks ago to losing $180,000 to her life coaching business in 1 year.
Gee, I wonder why.
And yeah, right? Who wants to coach like that? Yeah, and she's just not great. All their pictures now, since it seems like sobriety made her worse, which is insanity. Everything is about her now. It's all about clout, and he's not, like, she posted a picture of him by himself, like on her private profile. One picture of him for his birthday alone, and everything else was with her holding him. And he's like, all their pictures are super weird because he's at an awkward age, and like she's tall and he's tall, so like he's at an awkward age, and every single picture his face is just smashed into her boobs. And I'm just like, poor prepubescent child. Like,
right,
awkward.
Oh my God, I just no.
It's so cringy.
So
too.
much
It's
no.
not abuse, and it's not like, singly it wouldn't be too terrible, but like with all the things like added up, you're just like, ugh, this is so creepy. A couple years ago, she posted a selfie of her wrapping Christmas presents, and she was in literally a sports bra, and they live where it snows. She was in a sports bra and capri leggings, and was like posted a like full-on selfie, no presents, and she's like, wrapping presents as Santa. And it was one of the highlights of my relationship with her, because somebody else went on there and was like, are you fucking serious? You're posting half-naked pictures on Christmas Eve for clout, for wrapping your kid's present an hour before Christmas? Like, are you fucking kidding me? And you're nude? Is this the and obviously she wasn't nude, and I'm all for girls dressing however they want, but it was it's a clear cry for attention, and somebody called her out on it finally, because, she'll post bullshit on her Facebook, and it's, fake toxic positivity, and it's like 62,000 likes, and then, she'll post a picture of her face pressed up against her kid, and like, oh, we went on 42 hikes today, it's totally our thing, and, in the same picture, she'll post a picture of him, and he didn't want to go do that, but I forced him to so I could get this picture, like, admitting it, just straight up admitting it. Well, she posts this shit, and she doesn't understand, like, she'll take it down, and I think her pictures of herself and my son are, nobody likes them. They just go scrolled, and then all her business posts are, like, well liked and shared, and I think it shows. Like, I can't be the only person that sees the sickness. Like, clearly I'm seeing it in a biased light, Don't get me wrong, not everything she does is wrong, but I could pick it all apart.
Right.
Because I know, like, the crazy
it's personal with you too, so.
Yeah, it's very personal. But yeah, no, and it all ties back into, like, anxiety and autism, like being able to be manipulated by her for years to not just say, when am I going to meet him? When is my time? Everything I would ask her for many years was sidestepped, and I just didn't notice because I thought they were good people. So they would, I would say, oh my gosh, I can't wait until we get to talk on the phone, and she would go, I know, he just doesn't quite understand that, or yeah, well, he's so into Thomas the Train now, and, like, just totally change the subject, or, like, yeah, talk on the phone. He totally likes to talk on the phone with his grandma, and we can't wait until he's old enough to talk to you. I'll have to talk to you later, though, because we're busy right now, and it's bedtime, and, like...
You can talk to grandma, ...
Right, and that was my thoughts, too, was, it would be... That was, like, several different instances where I would ask for something, and she would sidestep it with, like, manipulation, and for the longest time, I was just totally, like, okay, well, if you really feel like that, then I guess, you're the mom, and I don't have a choice. And that's true. I don't have a choice, and he does know her as his mom right now. Yeah, and but yeah, it was. I ate it then because I thought it was normal and fine, and come to find out, like most open adoptions, you're supposed to have contact.
Yeah,
you're supposed to, because they've discovered that if you're not an abusive drug addict, basically, then it's better for you to see your kid even once a year so that they have that knowledge. If you're not dangerous, you're supposed to have some kind of contact when they're able to have conversations over the phone and stuff.
Right. I mean, it's good to give them a feeling of their roots.
Yeah.
If there's anything that pops up medically, like, hey, medical history stuff.
Like autism.
Right.
And, and like, for a long time, they were like, he's allergic to all kinds of foods, and we can't figure out what food group it is. And it started with pears, and I was like, oh, it's fruit. I'm allergic to apples. And they immediately figured it out. And it's like, yeah, sorry, that one hit me after the adoption. But, apparently it's still able to be passed on.
Yeah. So, anybody have any questions? This has been a good episode for us. Coming up on 2 hours.
Yeah, this has been an amazing episode, and I really think people have just been, like, riveted. The chat has been pretty quiet so far.
Yeah, it can be crazy, and I have some people. I'll tell some people, and they're like, "You just had a bad experience. It's just your opinion," or not all those bad things could have possibly happened to you in a row at once, And I'm like, well, I can prove it all. Like, I have witnesses or evidence. Like, I have paperwork that's missing signatures, important official signatures, which make, like, my son's adoption could be considered human trafficking because the paperwork isn't filled out properly, and I've had a private investigator looking for it, and it's not findable so far.
Damn.
It's supposed to be public record.
But I mean,
the paperwork that I'm looking for should be public record because it's not revealing any information about addresses or anything like that. It's public record you can just get it. It's not supposed to be a big deal. But I called the office. The state chairman for the ICPC for the state, from one of the states that I contacted, replied to my email, and I have the email and it's quoted, "I'm not sure how you can get that kind of paperwork. You're fucking chairman and you don't know how to get the paperwork? It's just one single piece of paper, and I have all the names. Like, I have the adoptive parents' names, I have lawyer names, I have, all this stuff." And she's like, "I don't even know how to find it."
It's like, yeah, you know where the baby was born, when the baby was born, who the doctor was.
And then she's just like, "I don't know how I would do that. I'll have to look into something else." And I'm like,
"You're the director. How do you not know your job?"
And everybody else's job. And also,
yeah, even if it's not your job, you should know whose job it is.
Right? It's either on the computer or in a file, and then it's the records department. It's one of those two things, and that's that. And if you don't have, if you can't look it up on either of those things, it's not there, and that's human trafficking, because that's the only federal regulation that I know of for adoption, is that one regulation, and they violated it, and that's incredibly dangerous. And if they hadn't violated that, if they had gone through it, the whole point of that paperwork is to make sure that the adoptive parents don't have a criminal record, aren't drug addicts or alcoholics, don't have any kind of medical history. It's all the secondary checking, and it comes from both states sending and receiving the child. They're both supposed to go over 5 check boxes for each parent, and it literally just is background checks, counseling interviews. I'm trying to remember all the paperwork we've just done. Home study, just 4 little things that make up the home study. The interviews, the paperwork, blah, blah, blah.
Probably look at the environment and watch how everybody interacts.
Yeah, and if both states had done that, then it would have had 2 social services offices checking those home studies and interviewing the parents to make sure that everything that was on that paperwork was true and solid. And they didn't do that. And that's the state corruption that I have a big ass problem with.
I
wonder why.
You can't.
Brandy's still on and listening, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I'm so long-winded. Woof. Sorry, right. It's just a big story. And there's so much that ties into it, and just so much.
And it's when those people who say, "Oh, you can't possibly have had all that happen." Well, there's this thing called law of averages. Someone out there gets the big stinky shit landing right on them, and you happen to be that person.
There's been someone that's died from being hit by a meteor, even if it was a tiny one.
Yep.
It still happened. Yeah, I agree completely.
It's and there's someone out there that's had it worse than you. It's just law of averages.
And actually, if you join a bunch of Facebook adoption groups for birth parents, my story is not shocking. It's average.
That's crazy.
Adoption was done in the 2000s. And all these people that I'm finding are too. And it's sad. America has an adoption problem.
Yeah, my adoption was done in the late 90s. But it was, I don't know, I mean, I remember filling out the paperwork, and I remember checking the box, open adoption is fine. And I remember filing it off, and I never got anything else after that, but it was all in state.
Right.
And it was my ex-girlfriend, her husband was adopting. So.
Oh, okay. So I haven't ever received a copy of the adoption paperwork that would have been completed through a judge or a their jurisdiction, their court.
Right.
That adoption paperwork that gets finalized at 6 months. Never seen that. I never signed anything post-birth. The only thing I signed in the hospital was a release of hospital. I released the baby to not me. That was the only thing I signed in the hospital. Also signed it on drugs. So if I signed anything else on drugs that I don't remember, which is likely, that's not legal either.
No,
because the Oregon state law for adoption is just all states, honestly. But
it's a federal thing. You're not allowed to sign a contract while under the influence.
and it actually specifies for adoptions in the hospital. You're not allowed to sign anything in the hospital.
Wow.
For the state that I'm in now, and for most other like states that have done any kind of adoption law work in the last like 20 years, you can't sign in the fucking hospital because you're on drugs and it's not considered reasonably recovered from the childbirth.
Yeah,
Done.
I'm thinking the same thing there, Eric. There's anti-adoption people.
Yeah. Ariel Klein just mentioned that she recently heard there's anti-adoption people.
Yes. So I'm not entirely anti-adoption. I would say that when I first started processing my trauma, I was definitely like hardcore adoption's horrible. It destroyed my life. It did. But, you know, in a certain way. Like I have a good life, but it destroyed me emotionally for a long time. And it probably always will. Like I'll always have issues from it. You know, it's taken a lot of work to be able to parent properly without panic. You know, I used to not let my oldest kid that I parented, she didn't go anywhere without me for several years until I met my current husband. Like he was the only person I trusted with her until she was like 3. And I took her everywhere. I didn't give a fuck. Like I wouldn't trust it because I figured like if she leaves, I'll never see her again, you know, because that's just what my experience was. And I don't think I thought that like, you know, I didn't think that sentence, but it was just like, I can't let her go. I can't.
It was probably,
You know,
just
no way
a
that's
subconscious thought in the back of your head. It's like, I've already had one child taken from me. I'm not losing another.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And here you are now getting ready to adopt, so.
Right. And that's I'm not anti-adoption anymore. There's a time and a place for everything. And I think that the infant adoption industry, which is what it is in America, the infant, being really specific here. These children are not abused. They're not unloved. They're wanted by desperate people who will do anything to keep their baby out of whatever they're trying to avoid. So most infant adoptions are unnecessary, and I strongly advise anybody going into an infant adoption to really ask yourself, can this woman or family be helped in a way that will help them keep their baby? Because the average amount of money that helps a woman keep her baby, there's an organization called Saving Our Sisters, and they've done a bunch of studies, and the average amount of money they raise for women who want to parent their children but are stuck thinking they have to have an adoption is $600 to keep their baby forever. Because they just need a car seat and a crib, basically. Some clothes, a ride to the hospital. Like, they just don't know what to do right away.
Like,
So
they'll make the rest of it work. They just need that up
yeah,
front.
And then, you know, so I really believe that like foster care adoption, I'm so aware that it's corrupt too. There's corruption everywhere in every government in the entire freaking world. Humans are imperfect, corrupt beings. I agree that foster care needs a lot of work, especially from our experience locally. It was rough, and I see why kids get lost in the system and abused by people that are supposed to be caring for them after they're in the system, because the counties need to do work.
And Bexy just threw up the website for savingoursistersadoption.org.
Yes.
There are amazing people, and they will help, you know, they'll help you if they can, but they're not anti-adoption in the way that a lot of like adopted kids are. They're unnecessary adoption is what I would call it. Because
Anti-rip the kids from the mother's arms.
Yeah, it's all based on needs in an individual situation. Like, not all foster kids even want to be adopted. Most of the teenagers just want to be left the fuck alone because they've already parented themselves their whole life, and they really don't care what your opinion is because they already did it, and they feel like they're, you know, combined with the regular amount of teenage I know it all and the I raised myself forever, there's just no getting through to the ones that don't want it. If they don't want to be adopted, they should have that choice, and they do now, which is great. But
good.
You know, the adoption industry, the infant adoption industry is a scary place in America. There was like 200 infant adoptions in the UK last year, and like 15 to 25,000 in America.
Wow.
Oh
mean,
my
So-
gosh.
I mean, honestly, we are a much larger country. I mean, we're the third
Yes,
most
so
populous country, so obviously our
Right.
numbers are going to be higher, but still.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think they did a per capita too, and it was really like 100 to 1 in most other countries. They did Australia too, and it was the numbers are like less than 500 for the whole country for adoption, and their Australia's numbers included foster care adoptions.
Wow.
500 a year. That's crazy because they're so hell bent on returning their kids and keeping families together, you know, because they realize the damage it does. Eventually,
I
most
mean-
adopted people have PTSD. They'll tell you in the adoption groups, like, I didn't even know. And, you know, the doctors are confirming now that you can pass PTSD onto your kids if you have it.
Yeah.
Genetically, it's pretty scary.
That's an epigenetic thing. You know, it's the little flags on the genes that cause that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you know, and things like, yeah, it's just crazy.
Like
the
anxiety.
And yeah, I think our adoption industry needs a lot of work for
So-
infants, you know, to be really morally proper, I guess.
So here's a question for you. Where do you stand on, say, surrogacy?
Surrogacy. So surrogacy is super complicated.
I mean, because it sounds like this is something that you probably studied.
Yeah, I have thought about it, and you know, we have somebody. You're not really related to them anymore, but they were sort of family for a while. That did a surrogacy a couple years ago, and
I know exactly who you're
She did-
talking about.
yeah. Well, she asked me what I thought about it too, and then she didn't talk to me for 6 months because, you know, I told her, like, it's really not good for the baby. It's really not, and it's exploitation of you. They're renting your uterus, and they're putting you through. You know, you sign things that say, you know, if I die, my family won't sue you. Like, they're abusing you. Like, they're using your body. What it is The Handmaid's Tale. Like, they're renting your body.
And then you have the rules of what you
Because they
can and
can't
cannot
create-
do, what you
And
must
then they have
do.
Yep. And then they have, exactly. That person couldn't even travel to certain states because surrogacy is illegal in those. She couldn't even travel. It was crazy. And, like, the baby is born, and it's another adoption. It's not even a surrogacy, really, because you still go through the adoption process. To do a surrogacy includes an adoption process. And the baby isn't bonded with its mom and dad that it go home with. It's bonded with its non-genetically matched mother, who raised it, basically, from the seed into a baby.
Right, 'cause I mean,
The only thing they know, the only thing they hear, smell, you know,
is you.
the heartbeat, the person, like, and then immediately ripped away because genetically they're not that mother's. But you know what? If they're not the mother, why are these people still getting updates 5 years later?
Right, and at the same time, it's like that embryo, it doesn't know, while it's developing, that it's in a foreign womb. It just,
Right?
it's comfortable, it's in a womb, it's getting its nutrients, it's getting its
just an
exercise.
innocent baby.
It hears your voice, it hears your breathing, it
Right.
hears your heartbeat, it hears your
think
gas.
I think surrogacy is really selfish, especially considering that you literally pay somebody to do it, and then, like, you know, like, that person made, like, you make like an average of $20,000 to $40,000 per surrogacy, and twice that if it's twins, and it's like, it's crazy. Like, you're selling your body, and people are like, it's fine, it's so beautiful, and I'm like, no, that's still prostitution technically, just because it's not, like, you're renting your sex organs still. That's, I mean, that
I've
sounds
never
pretty
even
close
thought
to
of it that
prostitution
way.
to me. Like, I'm not digging on, like, sex workers. They can do whatever they want, but I'm just saying, like, don't call something an onion when it's a potato. Like,
So, Betsy, how about you? Have you ever thought of it this way? Because I haven't. It never occurred to me.
I've never thought of it that way.
yeah, it's kind of sad. Like, obviously, like, there's less trauma involved than an infant adoption, because usually infant adoptions are coming from, like, you know, poverty and stress, and the women that do surrogacies are less stressed because even though they're coming from poverty usually, because they're suddenly getting this influx of money, and so they feel better about their whole life situation. They're using their it's sad because I know these women are still bonded to these kids. Otherwise they wouldn't care about the pictures either. I see they're posting pictures of their surrogacy babies that live in China that they'll never, ever, ever see again. And they talk about them and they post them and they talk monthly to the parents. And it's like, if all of you believe that she's really not a mother, then what's this pretense with keeping all the contact? What's the point?
Right. And actually, Bex, you want to hit the chat here really fast?
Yeah. Ariel actually says that it's kind of unfair to compare handmaids since that's unwilling. Is it adoption though if it's the couple's eggs/sperm?
Okay, so I've never actually watched The Handmaid's Tale. I was just using it as an example.
Right, and it's like any analogy, there's always a breakdown point.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not meaning to be like it was forced.
Handmaid's
like
Tale, it's basically rape under the pretense that it's not rape. That's Handmaid's Tale.
I haven't watched it because I read the synopsis and I was like, oh, sounds like a huge trigger. I'll avoid that and go back to my murder show.
Yeah, I watched the first season and I just noped out of it. I couldn't go any further.
Yeah, it was too much. I couldn't even start the first episode. Just the freaking synopsis and little clip they played. I was like, hell no. I cannot. I'm not putting myself.
The question that she asked was actually a pretty good question too. Is like, is it adoption though if it's the couple's eggs and sperm?
I mean, they go through the adoption process. They literally go through the adoption process just the same as an infant adoption.
That's just kind of wild.
And yeah, I know that there has been an instance where a woman tried to keep her surrogacy baby and she did lose and was forced to sign the adoption stuff over. It's been a long time since I heard about that, but I do know it happened. And I do consider it as similar to adoption. Obviously it's not exactly the same because this baby was brought here, very, very intentionally when it's surrogacy every time, very intentionally with all these plans laid out. But to the baby, it's exactly the same as adoption. For those, at least for that first, couple weeks of life where all they know has been their, womb and those smells and those sounds. And then when they're born, it is an adoption because the baby is going from all it's known to complete strangers. Even in genetically, they're not strangers, but to the baby, they're strangers. So it's the same as going through an adoption process, and they do go through the legal adoption process. So I would say, yeah, I think it is pretty much the same as adoption for at least the first couple years. I mean,
well, at least from a legal standpoint, based on the procedure.
Yeah, and then, if you think about it, I really do think surrogacy babies would adjust better. But can we say that's because they have a shit ton of money, obviously, to throw $50,000 into a woman to make a baby? Or is it because of the genetics? How are we ever going to know?
All I know is that if I were a woman and I was doing a surrogacy and I found out that I don't really like the other couple, I would put headphones onto my stomach and I would be playing speeches of my philosophy to start trying to embed that in.
Right, that's funny.
And then Richard and Brandy threw in a couple other things here.
Yeah. I was going to say, Richard says choosing to be a sex worker is one thing. Being exploited by others is the real problem, which is absolutely,
Hell yes.
Exactly.
That is so eloquent. Yes. Yes.
And Brandy says, all right, folks, I'll have to catch up later. Have a good night. And thank you so much for sharing your story and providing your insight, S.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were
I appreciate you guys commenting and everything, too.
Yeah, and you can tell, I mean, everybody's supporting you in the chat, obviously. I think that people are just kind of blown away. I
didn't want to waste my battery.
Yeah. But I think that it's just that a lot of people are just blown away by it. Because, I mean, like I said, your story's not one. It's like a lot of times I'll get people, I was like, here's a story that everyone's heard, but we're going from a different angle. This is like, y'all have never heard this shit before.
Right. Buckle up, bitch. This is going to get crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe, It was so funny when I met my husband, your cousin. I'm pretty sure, like, there was, okay, so we met in a really funny way. He pretty much grabbed my boob to introduce himself. My best friend of forever was like, this is the nicest guy ever. You're gonna love him. I cannot wait till he comes over. And that was the first thing he did. And I just glared at her like, are you fucking kidding me? You brought this shit back over. And we ended up hitting it off later, though.
Yeah, and I mean, and with my family, that's pretty, that's par for the course. Just weird shit that's not normal.
And then I'm pretty sure after like a couple, like a night or two of hanging out, I was still drinking like on the weekends really heavily. Like I was still like, oh, I'm 22. I'm going to party on just Saturday now because that makes it okay. And, he didn't have any kids or anything, and I just had the one by myself, and I had no money problems. Like, shit was stable, but I was still, drinking with my friends every Saturday. And, but it was just at our apartment. So he comes over, and, like, after a couple times, like, I'm pretty sure that I just started crying. Like, I would just cry for, like, hours. I would drink until I started crying, and that was, like, the beginning of our relationship, was him just, like, oh my God, this person is so broken. Like, and he was so amazing. He just like held me while I cried, which is not what I was used to.
Those boys, as wild as those boys are, they were brought up right. I could say that for certain.
The titty grab handshake was just something else with the, okay, but I'll hold you when you cry for 2 weeks and we don't even know each other.
Right. But I mean, again, with that family, it's always an obnoxious introduction, but then you get to see the real person behind that.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you saw at the camping trip, every time someone new showed up, it was an obnoxious greeting.
Oh, God, it was so, yes, very obnoxious. That's funny. I should probably go. I didn't really say goodnight to my kids.
Yeah, I gotta go and take care of my kids, too. It's getting kind of late here.
Yeah.
And the people on the East Coast are probably already just zonked out at this point.
Right, they're just sleeping. They fell asleep. They were like, this is insane. I can't stay up. I fell asleep with my computer on.
Also, we have some listeners in New Zealand, too, so they might be like waking up in the morning going, hey, this is a great way to start the day.
Are you ready to be mad for the whole day?
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
It took a lot of years for me to stop being so pissed off all the time about it, and it's a lot of work.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like that sometimes I'll see something that the adoptive mom posts, or I'll see something about in one of my adoptive mom groups where they're like, really don't want to tell my child they're adopted, and I just rip them a new one like all the time. Instead of like politely telling them something, I'll just be like, you know what, you shouldn't have fucking adopted then. Because I'll just be not in a space that day to have the patience for fuckery with children's lives.
Hey, I'm with you on that. I mean, I think that the kids deserve to know.
Oh,
because I mean. How many stories do you hear where the kid's like, I know there's something. I know it. Like, I don't look the same. I don't act the same. There's some behaviors that are different.
Every Disney movie for the first 30 years of their business was about the parents are dead, stepchildren, etc.
But yeah, now I'm starting to get rated by my kids, so.
Uh-oh. All right, well, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, they just got out of the bath. I got to take care of them.
And letting me just like.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Seriously, I'm glad that this happened.
Thank you for sharing, because this is something that people need to know about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't get enough attention because it's still happening.
Not at all.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's probably someone eventually that's going to listen to this and be like, "Motherfuck, this is hitting home so hard."
I'm sorry for whoever finds this and does that.
No, actually, that'd be a good thing because then they'd know that they're not alone.
Yes. Oh, God, it was so nice when I found that out, too. So that's very true. I'm glad to be part of that.
Hey, just like you're not the only one allergic to apples. It helps.
I did not know that until today.
All right. So, yeah. Again, thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you again, S, for coming on. Really appreciate it. I know it's stressful and it's not easy to come on to a podcast because you don't know how many people are listening and you don't know how many people will hear it. So, yeah. And thank you, Betsy, for joining.
I know, sometimes.
Oh, go for it.
Sometimes they blow up too, and they'll go around the internet every once in a while and get something that just pisses people off enough.
And just resonates.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna just wrap up here with a little bit of business, and we'll catch you guys next week. Wow, next week's the season finale, and then we are going to take a little hiatus while we schedule out season 3. And again, thank you everybody. Good night, and here's the little bit of business at the end. If you like what you hear and you want to help support the show, hit like on this episode and give us a follow. Also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/mentallivecast, all one word. This way you can stay up to date with what is happening between episodes. Also, share this episode and your favorite episodes with others that you think might enjoy the show or might benefit from listening to it. And if you want to help the show grow, go to our Spreaker page at www.spreaker.com/show/mentallivecast. Again, all one word. Go to the description area and expand it, and at the bottom you will see different ways that you can go ahead and donate to the show. We have plans on expanding the show beyond just being a podcast, and we need your help getting there.